we had our first conversation and I learned about the watch and I learned about all the metrics that can come off of it and like what you can learn about the body just by wearing this thing and collecting all the data. I was absolutely fascinated by that. So I'm like, oh, well, I had to get it. So I've been wearing my watch since I want to say probably the end of April last year. Very, very consistently. I wear it every night. I wear it every day. I only take it off to charge it and take a shower. And then
Yeah.
wear it most other time, running, walking, doesn't matter. Always had it on. So I've gotten some fascinating metrics off of it. I'm more than happy to talk about it and, ask any question away. Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. All right. Welcome back, Small Steps, Big Wins family. I'd like to welcome back on the podcast today, Dr. Torkil Faero. I think I pronounced his last name wrong again. I'm so sorry. I was excited after our first podcast interview about a year ago about wearable technology and how we can improve our health using it that I knew I wanted to have him back on the podcast so we could continue the conversation. Dr. Torkil is a general practitioner, an emergency room physician, a documentary filmmaker, author, photographer, and globetrotter. Love it. With over 25 years as a doctor, he has worked all over Norway, had tens of thousands of consultations, and gained a unique understanding of the illnesses that afflict us. He wrote a fascinating book that I read called The Pulse Cure, which we're going to talk about as well today. Dr. Torkil, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Great to be back. Yeah.
Oh,
And so fun that you used to watch and have so much experience that I'm looking forward to talk about.
yeah, me too. Me too. Well, after reading your book, The Pulse Cure, and I was a math teacher by trade, so I'm fascinated by numbers. So when we had our first conversation and I learned about the watch and I learned about all the metrics that can come off of it and like what you can learn about the body just by wearing this thing and collecting all the data, I was absolutely fascinated by that. So I'm like, oh, well, I had to get it. So I've been wearing my watch since I want to say probably the end of April last year. Very, very consistently. I wear it every night. I wear it every day. I only take it off to charge it and take a shower. And
Yeah.
wear it most other time, running, walking, doesn't matter. Always had it on. So I've gotten some fascinating metrics off of it. I'm more than happy to talk about it and, ask any question away. So I'll let you take it away. Where would you like to go?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about myself. I'm a Norwegian doctor, ER physician, written the book, The Pulse Cure, and about how to use wearables to track our autonomic nervous system and our physiology so that we get these numbers. It's like having a dashboard to our own physiology and nervous system, and it gives us so much insight that is normally not available to us because we are not really equipped by nature to get this insight. Because the inner stress levels, our heart rate, has never been prioritized. Because throughout evolution, all our senses needed to be directed outwards to the threats from animals and enemies and foul food and what were the ancient threats to our health. But now the threats to our health is from the too much stress on our inside, and not just stress in the mental way, but just as you probably have discovered, that there will be food, there will be alcohol, there will be so many factors that you never knew had anything to do with your stress levels. And your heart rate, and that's the beauty of it, for a physician, that your heart rate combined with your breath can tell you about the state of your body. And now the technology that we have, we can get these kind of dashboards and we can see how our bodies react to it with a sense that is kind of a substitute for the sense that we never needed to develop as human beings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that it's been fascinating with the watch. It took a couple weeks before it actually got a baseline reading for the heart rate variability. So before we go any further, well, the first is the wearable technology that we're talking about is like the wristwatches, the Apple Watch, the Garmin watches, the Whoop bands, the Aura rings, things like that. That's our wearable technology that gives us data and feedback for what's going on inside the body. What I'd like you to do, could you please explain exactly what heart rate variability is and why should we care, since a lot of our conversation is going to be, around that.
Yeah, so the heart rate variability is the most important metric you can get from your heart rate, from your pulse rate. So, of course, everybody knows that you can count your pulse, your heart rate, which could be 60 or 140 if you're running as fast as you can, and so on. But the much more sensitive and important biometric is the heart rate variability, the variation between heartbeats, because that can tell you whether you are in the restful recovery state, where the immune system works best. That is the parasympathetic restful state, which we are developed to be in the most of the time. When we put these wearables on hunter-gatherers, they will be like 3 hours in the stressful state and the rest of the day in a restful state. So that is what we are, constructed to have this balance. Of course, we are way off in our times, but we can approach it. Anyway, when you are in the restful state, when you breathe in, the heart rate goes up a little bit to take advantage of the extra oxygen in the lungs. And then when you breathe out, the heart rate goes down a little bit, measured in milliseconds, just to rest while there's less oxygen in the lungs. And this variation between heartbeats is what the wearables can pick up. And on the contrary, if you are in the stressful state, for whatever reason, whether it's mental, whether it's because of food, because of alcohol, because of your menstrual cycle, your menopause, or whatever reason, then your heartbeat will beat as a metronome very, very steadily, like a clock. And then, of course, these wearables can keep track of it in the moment and throughout 24/7. While you're busy living your life, these wearables keep track whether the intensity of your life is sustainable or not, for good health.
So let's talk about the role of stress and how that plays out in the body. So I found that I can be stressed a good part of the day, and then at night generally it'll be blue, which is like
Mm.
no stress at all. Talk about the types of stress that the body has. You mentioned a few, and is there good
Mhm.
stress, bad stress? Uh, you know.
Yeah, I would say there has to be a stress balance. So we have to stress. We are made to, hunt and fight and, to be animals out in the world. So we're not supposed to be scared of being stressed. So that is no problem. We should stress. We should put load on our systems, both mentally and physically. And then that is the way we can grow stronger and build more resilience. But we just have to compensate by enough downtime, enough restful time, so that it all becomes manageable. And why this is important is that most of the diseases that we treat as doctors and the diseases that we die from and are medicated, for, that is diseases that is based on too much stress in this broad sense. So it makes us sick. And it not only makes you sick and makes you die earlier, but your well-being is also, compromised. You don't feel well when you're too much stress. If you eat
Mhm.
the wrong food, it will be a problem for you. You can have brain fog and problems concentrating and symptoms from your gut, from headache and so many problems. So that is why it's important to keep track of this. It's not just for fun. It's also important for your health.
I would really love if you would talk a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you become fascinated with the wearables, and a little bit of your journey to health that brought you to this point to share with people? Because I think it's really important here so people
Mm.
understand where you're coming from. If they're watching it on YouTube, you look really healthy, but
Mhm.
I remember that was not
That was not the
always the case.
case. Not
Yeah, yeah.
always the case. So 12 years ago, my dad died, and he was 73 from a normal cancer, and he had lived a normal life like most people live. And I just took a look in the mirror, and I saw that I did all the mistakes in my book. So the Pulse Cure is not only about how to use wearables and how to track your heart rate. It's also the best advice on sleep, on movement, on rest, on nutrition, on alcohol, and so many things. So that is the main thing about the book. And all of those things I did wrong. I weighed 40 pounds more than I do today, did not exercise anything, did not care about what I was eating, I was turning the clock. As a doctor, you work nighttime, evening, morning, and just swirling around the circadian rhythm. And well, did everything wrong. I was using nicotine. I was smoking even at the times. So I just looked in the mirror and I just saw that I start to look like my patients, and this cannot continue. I want to live as long as I can. And then I discovered that there's so much to do with our lifestyles that can give us like 24 extra years of lifetime if we do this, research shows. And well, I started changing everything. And somewhere along the journey, I got aware of that there's a thing called heart rate variability, which we did not learn in medical school. I had never learned that until maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Mm.
And then I also understood that we have this metric in the wearables, and that is how the Pulse Cure, how the book was made. And the book is now, translated into 7 languages and is still a bestseller in Norway 2 years after its release. So it's still really busy. It's still the only book, to my knowledge, about how to use these wearables and combined with lifestyle changes. I don't know why, but it's certainly, as I have discovered, and so many others have discovered, and you have discovered, is a really valuable tool. It's
Mhm.
cheap, it's easy, it's fun, and it helps you, get more energy in the everyday life, and also will protect you against disease. So, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
given.
Yeah, I mean, the book was great. I mean, definitely am gonna go back and read it again because there is, like you said, there's so much in there about breath work and about what you eat and about sleep and all that. What questions do you have for me since
Mhm.
I've been wearing this since April last year?
I would be curious about the most surprising thing that you have discovered.
Yeah, the most surprising thing I've discovered is watching my stress level change, like watching my stress level and what it measures at night and the correlation between what I've done the evening before and then what the stress level looks like while I'm sleeping. So I found that I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but the evenings, like sometimes if I did, I'll have a few glasses of wine or something. The stress level through the whole night will stay in the red zone. So I have a Garmin watch, and the Garmin that I have measures the stress level. It goes from 0 to 100, and that in the 100, like when you get above, I think 50 or 60, it goes in the orange, and then it goes red when it's closer to 100. And then when it's really low, it'll stay in the blue. So
Mm.
what was fascinating is that the nights that I usually have a light dinner or I finish eating earlier in the evening, low stress, turn off the electronics around 8 o'clock, power down, by the time I go to sleep, which was maybe around 9:30 or so, through the night, blue. No
Mm.
stress at all. Very little stress. Maybe I'll have a stress tick if I got up and went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, something like that. But for the most part, blue. And then the nights that I find I'm gluten intolerant, I will eat gluten, shouldn't, but I do. The evenings, like if I eat gluten, I'll find it's stressed through the night. If I drink alcohol in the evening, I'm stressed through the night. If I eat a late dinner, even if it's not gluten, stressed through the night. So it's like
Mm.
eating after 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so that to me was the most surprising thing is what I'm eating and or drinking is affecting my stress level and then it affects my
Mm.
sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what most people find as well. So once people start, doing these kind of things, they quite immediately feel the effect and they have more energy. And of course, I never used to think when I woke up in the morning, or at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, that how I feel now has anything to do with what I was eating, 12 or even more hours earlier. But with these devices, you can see that. You can see that if you eat gluten, that will affect your heart rate and you will feel worse. And it will, even in people that are not, have celiac disease or gluten intolerant, they can see that flour-based meals and bakery goods is a quite powerful stressor for so many
Mhm.
people. And a lot of people have found out that when they cut down, they lose their joint pains, they lose their headaches, they lose their migraine, everything that you want to lose and feel better. And of course, alcohol, as you also have seen, is what I used to, and that shows the power of it, because I used to think that drinking 2 glasses of wine was the best thing to wind down and calm down. Of course, when you get the trackers, you see it's actually, it's not even the best thing, it's the worst thing.
I
And
know.
so it kind of shows how little insight we have into the system. We don't feel this. We're not equipped to do it. We just the same way as we don't feel a high blood sugar, we don't feel high hypertension, because we don't have any alarm signals for this. It was never needed from 100 years and the millions of years backwards. So, but now we need it, and now we can see it. We can see that if we eat flour-based food with gluten, it will affect our heart rate. With the alcohol, you have probably seen that your stress levels throughout the night is as high as the most stress you can have in the
Mhm.
daytime. If you're holding presentations or doing something really stressful in the daytime, that is the same amount of stress that you will have in the nighttime as you are sleeping with alcohol. At least it's that way for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I found that with me too. And then I check it through the like actually I'm gonna look right now just for curiosity because I found that when I do activities that I enjoy as well, like podcasting actually is medium stress for me. It
Hmm.
does register as stress, but it's medium
Yeah,
stress.
for
Yeah.
me too. So now my stress level is 33,
Yep. Mine
as
50. But
50.
I'm
Yeah, but
I'm
you're
a
the
little more
podcaster.
stressed when I do yeah, 'cause that's right, 'cause that's right, it's a little more stressful for
And
me to do this.
my stress level is actually lower today, because yesterday I was on a cross country ski trip for 8 hours.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was yeah, it was really long, because we made some wrong navigation there. So we were supposed to go slower. But so then today, and that tends to be after such an intense workout. If I then relax the next day, I will be blue throughout the day. So
Mm,
what you also will see is that when you do the workouts in the right way, it will affect your stress levels positively.
mm.
If you work out too much, too hard, it can be a problem. But
How do you define working out the right way versus too much stress, and can you
mhm.
read that off of the watch, off the
Yeah,
wearable?
that will depend on which watch you have. I'm not sure if the one you have will show you training readiness. Do you know?
Let me see. I'll look.
It will show training readiness. So before the cross country ski trip yesterday, my training readiness was good. It was 86. Today it was 39 in training readiness.
Mm.
So it was a sign that, okay, you should not exercise today. And if you do, you should take it easy.
Yeah, they have that. It's not called training readiness, it's called I think it's the body battery.
No,
That
it's an extra feature in addition
oh,
to the
is
body
it?
battery. So my
Oh,
body
okay.
battery today was 39,
Oh,
and
okay.
that is quite low for me.
Yeah, mine was
Um,
38 when I woke up,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
low for me. If I slept really well and I'll have blue line at night, I'll get up and my body battery has been as high as 78,
Oh, oh,
80.
that's good. That's good.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so I'm often saying that most of the days your body battery should be around there. If
Mhm,
some days they're down to 30 or 40, that's okay. So you
mhm.
don't need to be perfectionistic about this. You have a lot of leeway so that you can have a good balance. So yeah.
The
So anyway, that tends to be a low stress the day after a good workout. And so many people are working out too hard. So they have a stressful life, they have a stressful family life, and maybe they have time for 2 or 3 workouts, and then they think that, okay, then I have to go all in when I have these 2 workouts. And it's just too much for the overall stress levels. So you're asking me about good stress and bad stress. So in general, stress is good for you. You just have to make sure that you have the resources to stress that much. So you shouldn't use more resources in a certain day than you have accumulated, in your body battery throughout the night. So you just have to look at that. Bad stress, that is what I would call unnecessary stress. That just saps you of your forces and doesn't give you anything in return. So a good workout or a challenge at work, say you're holding a presentation or something that is difficult to do, that is good stress. It will build your capacity over time. But eating gluten or drinking alcohol or other things that you have probably identified that just gives you stress and nothing in return. That is what I would call bad stress. And then, of course, the most important thing, regardless of the stress, is to make sure that you have enough time in the blue zone then on the watch. The blue zone is a parasympathetic zone that makes all this, balance out in the long run. And you can have a tough week, that's okay, but then you have to compensate the week after. So
Okay, so we have our good stress, our bad stress. Okay, let's just take me. I'm in the blue zone mostly when I'm sleeping. During the
mhm.
day, I'm not in the blue zone. Usually from when I get up, I'll go and I'll do at least a half hour run, if not a 40-minute run, 6 days a week. I rest one day and then it's generally high all day long. Is that is that okay? Or
So
should some of us
what
just be
it
more
it could be more balanced. It also
yeah.
depends on how effective your sleep is.
Mm,
So if you're saying that your body battery is like 70 to 80 most of the days, is that
mm,
right?
mhm, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, somewhere around
then
there.
that's good enough. Then you can experiment. You can try. If you're, I don't know how hard you run for those 6 days. How is it really hard or?
No, I'm doing maybe for just to give an idea, I would say a 9-minute mile. So I'll run 30 minutes, at least 3 miles in less
Hmm.
than 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Couple
should be
times.
good.
It's about 5 miles, 6 miles, 5 miles an hour, I guess, something like
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
should be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's not
have you
too
seen your
stressful.
VO2 max? Have you seen your VO2 max?
I think so. I'm looking on my watch. VO2 max.
Yeah, I can explain a bit about the VO2 max while
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking for
talk
it.
about
Yeah,
that.
VO2 max is one of the most important metrics you can find on your watch. It's really strongly connected to health and longevity.
Mhm.
So the VO2 max is a measure of your fitness level. So the better your cells are at utilizing oxygen, will result in a better VO2 max.
Okay.
And what you want is to be, among the above average and preferably among the 25% best in VO2 max. It's not so much to gain from being of the top like 2%, but you want to be on the top 25%. What you really don't want to be is among the lowest 25% of VO2 max. That is where I get my patients from. Those are who I make my money. Because
Wow.
if you have
Okay.
such a poor fitness level, everything is a struggle. Your
Yeah.
body is really working hard in overdrive just to do everyday life. So once you get your capacity up by running or being active in any way, that makes your whole physiology run more efficiently and you will sleep better. So I
Okay.
can see that people with a low VO2 max, and then I'm talking about maybe around 30, you're really struggling to sleep well, to
Mhm.
function without stressing too much.
I did not know about the VO2 max. I did find it.
And
I
what was
did
it?
find it. So you want the 6-month data or you want the current?
The current.
All right. Well, here's the current. Current is 41.
That is
It's
excellent,
excellent. It
as it
says I'm in the
says.
top 10% there.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
which is
was
really good. So you're
wow.
at top 10%, and so you're at a good, healthy level. So it's not any reason for you to get a better VO2 max.
Okay. All right.
Health
All right.
wise, of course, if you want to beat a certain time in a race or something, that's useful. But this is perfect. You shouldn't really exercise more than this because then it could be too much exercise actually.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what I
So
like about the watch? It does give you your fitness age versus your real age. So
mm,
I've got that as well. I turned 53 last week and my
mhm.
fitness age is 47 and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
was
it
like,
will show
wow, that's
you, and
pretty cool.
this I think is a quite representable number for you. In my
Mhm.
clinical experience, and I've had more than 100,000 consultations. I've seen more than 50,000 different people. So I can
Wow.
usually, when I just see them, just just the glow in their eyes, how their skin looks, how I can see their health level. Often you could just turn the patients in the drawer. You already know that they're healthy or unhealthy or whatever. So your fitness level shows in your appearance, right?
Mm.
So it's very representable. So you have done what is within your powers to live healthy and a long life. Of course, there will be things happening, and you
Yeah.
could have bad luck and attract some kind of disease, but
Yeah.
you have kind
Yeah.
of done your part
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this.
I've been trying. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I know my family has a history of diabetes, type 2
Mm.
diabetes. So my father is diabetic, his father was, his mother was. So
Mm.
I am trying to keep myself healthy
Yeah,
and within a normal weight range so that I don't
yeah,
trigger that, but it's
yeah.
hard. It's challenging that I get a little bit older and I'm closer to
It's
menopause. My
challenging.
A1 and my A1C, I watch that even though I stay healthy where I'm at, I'm getting the blood work once a year and then the A1C is just creeping up and up and up. And I'm like,
Okay,
wait a minute,
what is
it's
it
a
now? What is it now?
6.2, I think it was. It
All
was
right, all
close.
right.
It was
Yeah, so
close. It was
it's good that
it's
you're
moving. It
exercising. Have you been using a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor? Oh, you
Nope.
should really do that. You should have a
Okay.
continuous glucose monitor. So that will be for the next episode then.
Yeah. Okay.
So you should really have a continuous glucose monitor, because then you can see the effect of a certain meal
Oh,
on
okay.
your blood sugar, and
Can
that
you
is
get that
real useful.
Yeah, can you get that through the watch? The
No,
glucose No,
no,
that has
you
to
would have
be
to order it separately.
yeah, yeah.
I think
I
the prices should be, in dollars. It should be maybe $60.
Mhm,
So if you use it for 2 weeks and not change anything about your nutrition, so that you see your baseline, and you will get an A1C number from that,
mm,
and then you will try to eat as well as you can for the next 2 weeks, and then see the difference.
the
Have you heard the glucose goddess on
mm-mm,
Instagram? No, she has
no,
written a book called The Glucose Revolution, and she has very practical advice on
mm,
how to reduce your blood sugar, and that will be to change the order of what you're eating. So you start with proteins and fat, and you end with the carbs.
okay.
And you can also start with a salad, and that will reduce the sugar spikes, and will improve it also. So
Yeah,
of
that's
course, staying away from fast carbs. Yeah.
Yeah, fast carbs and sugar. I try and cut
Yeah.
out all sugar from like the refined processed sugar stuff,
Mm.
just cutting that stuff out. I'm just watching, I'm
Yeah.
watching and I can tell if I eat too much that,
Yeah.
that
Uh,
it's not good. But it's interesting just to get the information off of the watch, with
yeah.
the stress level after eating, like say pizza. Like I had pizza the other
Pizza is
night.
horrible. Pizza
I
is
know,
horrible.
I know.
And when you, yeah. So what I used to eat a lot of pizza, but when you see the stress levels from the pizza, it's
Mhm.
suddenly not so tempting anymore, because you at the same time you see the pizza, and you also see the numbers, in your head, the
Yeah,
result of
yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
you want to choose something else. So it
Yeah.
makes it possible to make more qualified choices, and it is a challenge, but I can promise you it's a lot bigger challenge if you don't do it, because then
Mhm.
you'll get the challenge after you get sick, and then it's kind of more out of your control. So now
Mhm.
it's a kind of a structured effort that you have control, and particularly with these devices, you have the visual control with these numbers. But if you just don't take that challenge and just hope for the best,
Mm,
then suddenly it's up to your doctor. How good is your doctor?
mhm.
Is it even possible to fix the disease that you have contracted,
Mhm.
from not doing this challenging effort? So
Wh
it's better to prevent.
Yeah, when you have a patient that comes into you, like, at ground zero and not knowing where to start, and you can see that they need to start making some changes, what are some small steps that you give them in the beginning,
Hmm.
where to start?
So what you start is by trying to optimize, or I would rather say normalize your sleep, because you will, as you have done, identify certain obstacles for good sleep. Once you remove these obstacles, like eating late or eating pizza or drinking alcohol or working out too late also,
Mhm.
then your sleep will improve, and then your stress levels will be improved from the morning. So you will make better decisions throughout the day. If you start the day, being tired, having poor sleep, it's not so easy to get the willpower to do the good choices. Suddenly you will eat some bakery goods or sugar or something, and then you'll be worse off the rest of the day. So just make sure in the beginning that your sleep is good. This is why the pulse cure starts with getting your sleep in order. And you would start to do exercises, to do workouts. And if your VO2 max is down around 30, that can be a challenge, because then you cannot almost tolerate any effort without producing too much lactic acid and
Mm.
feeling inflamed in your body because of that.
Mm.
So if you start from a low level, you should do it ridiculously slowly and easy.
Mm.
So you must just maybe you would just start by walking and then add in some jogging over time. So to build the physical capacity is really important for your stress levels.
Okay, so
And
starting
then,
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
starting there, and then, of course, starting reducing alcohol. I haven't met anyone tracking their system that has not reduced the amount of alcohol when they see the effect. Other things that they will identify is certain foodstuffs that they cannot tolerate that well. It can be gluten, as you said, or milk products. It can also
Mm.
be, for me, it's like chili is just horrible, mustard, horrible, and most people will react to a bit differently to these different foodstuffs. Yeah, and also a lot of people will see in the fertile age, the women will see that the week before menstruation is a real big physiological load on their systems, so that the week before menstruation they should reduce alcohol, should reduce hard exercise, should try to sleep better and do better choices in nutrition. And then they can flatten out this stressful PMS week before menstruation.
Yep.
They can see that this is stressful, measurable on their devices. And many people then see that when they start with their HRT with some hormonal replacement, or hormonal supplements, maybe one should say, then and they do it with bioidentical hormones, their stress levels go down.
Mm.
So it's also useful for that.
Mm.
You
Okay,
can say,
so
you can
there's
say
a
that anything that is good for your body is reflected in the heart rate, and anything or that is bad for it will also be reflected in the heart rate. So it's a good
okay.
monitor for our stress
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah, and I like that you said good stress is something that adds to you versus bad stress that doesn't really give you anything in return. All these things that you talk about, and your book goes into them as well, normalizing your sleep first, like how important that is to
Hmm.
get a good night's sleep. For the exercise, I want to circle back around. I know people, they'll wear their watch and they're like, well, I'm going and I am doing those cycling classes, 45 minutes of my heart rate gets up into this 170 or even max out at 180 heart rate zone, but yet their VO2 might be in that 30 range, So if I hear you correctly, you're saying don't stress yourself out with that type of exercise. Instead, back down on
Hmm.
the exercise, do something more low key until you can
Yeah,
get that VO2 max under control, correct?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So if you want to go up above 85% of your max heart rate, that should be reserved for top athletes, I think. And it's certainly no use if it's health that you're seeking.
Okay.
Then you should stay in a lower heart rate than 85. Maybe you should do 80% of your training in zone 2, which will not produce lactic acid, but will give you a lot of quality training, and not the stressful
Hmm.
inflammation afterwards from the
Okay, so
training.
let's talk about the numbers then. So from what I understand, 180 is the max heart rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a normal maximum heart rate, like for me, is 185. I try not to get over 160. which should
Okay.
probably be somewhere around the 85% mark. That is good enough for me. So
How
it's
does
no
somebody figure
need.
that out then? Like, if it's
They would see it. That is a number that the Garmin watch would give you. It
okay.
will give you the maximum heart rate, and if it changes sometimes you get a warning that, okay, we changed your maximum heart rate to 184, or 187, or whatever, something.
Oh, okay,
So
that's
you will get the number, and you will see the zones, on your watch after an activity.
oh, okay. I've heard it that you can also find your heart rate target zone by taking 180 and subtracting your age, and then it's like plus or
Yeah.
minus 5 on that, an
But
idea
then
if you did
then I
a
think
lot.
for me that would mean 117 heart rate. So, but it's not right. So it's much better to use the wearable and find out your actual maximum heart rate.
Man,
It will
that's
also give you a lactic acid threshold, which for me seems to be
mm.
162. So as long as I stay below 162, 163,
Mhm.
I can exercise for quite a long time without producing lactic acid, or that is, I will produce lactic acid, but it will be consumed at the same rate. So that there will be no surplus lactic acid in my system creating the inflammation. And it's very important to have that day off also, because if you train too much, then your immune system is not working properly. So there will be a sweet spot on how much to exercise. And if you go above that sweet spot, you're more or less have the same health gain as the one who will not exercise at all.
Mm.
And that level of intensity and the hours of workout is surprisingly low. I cannot remember it exactly, but
Mhm.
maybe 10 hours of intense exercise is at least more than you should.
Mm.
If one is exercising more than that for health reasons, it's probably better if you for your race time, but for your longevity, it's not important. And
Mm.
in the blue zones around the world that you have probably heard of, that there are certain blue zones, they call it, those are the zones in the world where most people reach 100, or with the most
Mhm.
centenarians in these zones.
Mhm.
And they are not exercising. They are just moving naturally in the landscape. Maybe they live in a hilly country, or
Mhm.
there are a lot of outside, in the sunshine, and moving naturally. So you don't need to exercise hard for health reasons, but you need to exercise, that's for sure.
Okay. In your experience, I'm gonna switch a little bit. What are your thoughts on breath work and how you use it?
Breathwork is the most important thing to calm down and to get control of. So to be able to control your stress levels through breathwork is the most important thing you can do. So I just released my fourth or fifth book now, called The Rest Cure in Norway. It's not translated into English yet, or I don't know if it will be even. And then I'm talking about breathwork as the most important way to calm down. So to try to breathe maybe 6 times a minute, so which would be maybe 4 seconds in and 6 seconds out, to try to keep the out breath a little bit longer than the in breath, and that will really calm down the system. And of course, that's invisible, so you can do that even in a meeting or in a conversation, because nobody will see that you are calming yourself down. And it's kind of an ancient signal to our ancient brain. So what we're talking about here is really the bottom of our brain, the reptilian brain, the part of the brain that we share with all vertebrates, even hundreds of millions of years since we parted from them in an evolutionary sense. So we're kind of hacking into our reptile brain by breathing slowly, which is an ancient signal for that it's calm outside. This organism is breathing slowly. There cannot be an emergency waiting, in the next moment. And these are one of the signals that our nervous system and immune system uses to kind of, know what to do. And and sometimes it's nice to maybe have 10 minutes of breath work if you can find the time. But the most important, I think, is to do it in between. So maybe multiple times a day.
Mm.
So if there comes a space of time that you otherwise would just put up your phone and scroll and see if there's any news or mail or whatever, Instagram or so. You could rather use it to calm yourself down. And then you would see on your watch that maybe if you find that your days are too intense, with the orange curves and too much stress, you could try for a week to maybe have 5, 6 times of 2 minutes slow breath, spread throughout the day. So you could experiment with that and see the results. So that's the fun of it, because this is kind of a gamification of your health, where you, if you see that there's too much orange stressful curves, can try, okay, this week I will try breath work for so and so long and see what happens. It becomes a game where it's your own life and health is at stake, and not just your avatar in the game. It's your life.
So I do breath work sometimes if I can't fall asleep. I will lay there and deeply breathe in and breathe out and count 30. 30.
Yeah, it works. That's what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do too. It just calms down your system from, if you get too much adrenaline in the day,
Mhm.
it lowers your cortisol, lowers your adrenaline, and makes it easier to fall asleep. And
Mhm.
also, if you wake up in the middle of the night, and the stress from some nightmare or whatever, you can calm yourself down. So having this possibility to calm yourself down, this liver into the nervous system, is really important.
I appreciate you talking about it because sometimes we think we need an external source to help us calm down. We don't need anything. What we have is right inside of us.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah, and
think
it's
that
free. It's free.
it's
It's
free.
always available. So, and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
all the advice in the Pulse Cure is free. It doesn't cost anything. What is expensive is getting sick, right? Particularly in the US, where it costs you money, where it's almost like, I've heard people describe in the US, it's like you're making money, you're saving for your retirement, and then big pharma comes and takes it all, and the doctors, because it's so expensive getting sick. So
Yeah, that's
so the
right.
good thing is that, you know exercising, sleeping, breath work, eating, avoiding, bad food that gives you inflammation. All of this is free. So it
Mhm.
doesn't cost you anything. And it just, well, it improves your chances of avoiding those expenses at the end,
Mhm.
so that you are vital and you can do what you want, and that all your money is going into living your adventure and not to the doctors and big pharma getting away
Yeah.
with all your money.
You know what? When you mentioned big pharma, I had somebody say once, I never realized how sick I was until I watched TV commercials. So in America, you got every
Yeah,
other TV commercial is like, here's a pill. Are you overweight? Here's a pill. Are you depressed? Here's a
yeah,
pill. Do you go to the bathroom too much in the middle of the night? Here's
yeah,
a pill.
yeah.
Like
And
there's a pill for everything.
yeah, and
It was
that's a problem,
uh,
because you cannot monetize on these strategies. There's nobody going to pay a commercial saying go outside and run, or go
yeah, or
outside and get some
breathe.
more sunshine, or breathe more slowly. Nobody's going to pay for that, and
Yeah.
so there's no money in it. So that is a problem. That is a good thing, and the problem with these strategies, that they're free and
Mhm.
accessible for everyone, but there's also no commercial pressure behind it. Even
Right.
fasting. People, they say lack
I was
energy. Have a snack. But what you find out with your watch is that fasting, could be a very good way to get more energy.
Yeah,
So.
let's talk about fasting, and I was gonna
Mhm.
ask you about that. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting for those listening that aren't quite sure? Like, we hear a lot about it, but we're not sure on the execution end of it. Talk a little bit about the importance of fasting and what it can do for the body.
Yeah, so fasting is calming for your body. So you will feel hungry, particularly in the beginning, but after a while you will be less hungry. So what I really recommend in my book is that you get a restricted feeding window of, maybe 8 hours, so that you eat all your meals within those 8 hours, maybe from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., for example. That is quite good for most people. And then you will find that your stress levels, when you're not eating, they will be better. You will feel calmer, and after a while you don't feel so hungry. What makes most people hungry is eating, throughout your waking time. Then the blood sugar goes up and down, and whenever it goes down, you feel hungry.
Is that true for just protein? I know somebody said to me, they're like, "Oh, well, I have a protein shake, a 100-calorie protein shake first thing in the morning." And I'm like, "Well, that's not fasting then if you're gonna have that protein in the morning, and
No.
then you do it every, like, 2 hours." Talk about what your
Yeah.
thoughts are on doing something like that for the body, and
It-
maybe
yeah.
it's attached to weight loss? I'm not sure.
Yeah, there are multiple problems. So your gut system is not constructed to deal with food all day long. So it is constructed to need quite a lot of downtime to repair and to shut off the cells that they that are damaged. So that is why your intestinal system in itself need that time without
Mm,
any food to do the repair work, so that you don't get leaky gut. You don't want leaky gut, and you don't want small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because if you're eating like this all the time, there will be food contents in your small intestinal system that is not made to be there, and there will be a bacterial overgrowth because of that
mm,
reason. So once you start restricting your feeding window, you will feel a lot better. So that is one of the, and also you will lose weight when you do that. And another important thing about fasting is that it triggers autophagy. And autophagy is, I think, probably discovered, like 20 years ago. It was discovered that if you don't eat, your body is going to eat your own cells, and it's
mm,
going to start with your worst cells, the cells that are on the verge of developing into a cancer or developing into an inflammatory state. And so if you don't eat, it starts getting rid of that problem. That is why you will also feel better when you introduce fasting in some ways. And to get the maximum effect of that fasting, you may need to fast for like 3 days, or you maybe need to try a fasting mimicking diet where you eat somewhere around 700 calories and you get the same effect on more or less on autophagy. So, and
okay.
also you will see it on your heart rate monitor, you will see it on your Garmin watch.
Mhm.
I must say that when we are talking about micromanaging our stress levels like we are talking about now, that is almost only Garmin that gives us this opportunity. So
Mhm.
on the other watches and wearables, you can maybe see the overnight results, but you will not be able to see in the same way that you can identify that it was the pizza that gave you the stress,
Mhm.
from 6 o'clock. It wasn't the meeting at 1 o'clock that you maybe think was the reason. So that would be the Garmin watches. Yeah, but it's
Yeah, what
much more motivating, to not have breakfast, for example, when you see that your system is calm.
Yeah, I usually don't eat breakfast. I will get up in the morning, I don't do anything other than a tall glass of water, and I'll have a cup of coffee or 2.
Hmm.
Like 2, and
Yeah.
then not really anything until maybe 10 o'clock, and then have that feeding window between 10 and 6. Talk about that clarity when you're fasting, and I experienced that. I didn't think so at first, that that would be the case, and I appreciate you
Hmm.
talking about the eating every 2 hours and the benefit of fasting, and how that eating every
Hmm.
2 hours isn't the best
No,
for the body.
it's the best for the food companies, and that is why they are trying to make people snack, because if you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can only eat so much. So
Yeah,
that is why you have all these commercials, so that if you feel hungry, have a Snickers or have a protein bar or have something. So they are trying to fill the gap between the meals so that you buy something, which is only good for the wallet and the stockholders of these companies. It's not our health that is their priority. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So, Dr. Torkil, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or cover in our podcast that maybe we didn't touch on?
No. No, did you have heart rate variability on your watch?
Oh,
Your
yeah, yeah,
heart
yeah,
rate
that's
over time? Over
oh,
time? Yeah, yeah,
let me pull up the stat right
yeah.
here.
Point to the
It's
4 week.
yep,
Mhm.
here's the 4 week. There you go,
Yeah.
you can
So
see
there
it.
you can see. Yeah. So there you
Yeah,
can see December. Okay. Can you swipe
yep,
back towards the
I will.
December?
This is December 3rd through the 30th. There we go. That one.
But no, we 4 weeks before that.
I haven't been doing so hot for the month of December,
Yeah, so
November.
you see that December is often a bit harder. So I can
Yeah,
often see that December is hard, for
yeah.
people. So there's
Lots of
more
parties.
stress, lots of parties, lots of fun. So
Yeah, I have to go back a little bit. I would say it's very interesting when I look at, I'm swiping back and forth as we're talking. So like October 8th to November 4th, it was pretty
oh
good. Pretty good.
yeah,
And
and you can see that seems to be in the summer. It seemed to be better there.
yeah. So that's October to November. This is September 10th to October 7th.
Hmm.
And I have gone through a very stressful 5 months working a job that was extremely stressful. And I saw that reflected in the watch as well.
Hmm.
Here, if I go back, here is July 16th through August.
That seems good.
Yeah, there's no stress there at all.
And what you really don't want is to get into a burnout situation. And if you do get into a burnout situation, you would see that your numbers would be in the red for a long time.
Okay.
1,
I was
2,
afraid to
3,
ask.
4 months. And you would not get into a burnout situation without these watch warning you and showing it to you for a long time ahead.
Yeah.
So that is maybe the most important thing. So the most important is not to have a horrible stress levels that puts you in the danger of getting into a burnout and compromises your immune system, so that a variety of diseases can take advantage of your low performing immune system.
I have heard it said that for heart rate variability versus your resting heart rate, that your heart rate variability should be consistently higher than your resting heart rate. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so.
Because mine is like my heart rate
Yours is,
variability will
but
be
it's
in
very
the,
good. Yeah, your
yeah, it will
HRV
be,
is really good, but no, it doesn't. It's a lot of genetic variation in the
okay.
heart rate variability.
Okay.
So even 30 for people could be good. In
Okay.
your age, probably most people in your age would have 30, 35, maybe up
So
to
mine's
40.
55 at night.
Yeah,
I average
yeah,
55 at night, and
yeah.
then resting heart rate is around 44 to 45 at night
Yeah, and
when I'm not
most of
stressed.
your friends and family, they would in your age would have 35,
Oh,
and
okay.
of course their heart rate would be maybe 70 or something.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the watches and the Whoop bands and the rings, they will take data from millions of users,
Mhm.
combine it with artificial intelligence and
Mm,
algorithms, and present it to you so that they show you where your stress level is at. You're most of the time in the green zone there, almost all your curves,
yeah.
except for short periods of stress, that is probably explainable. And you would probably, on each of those periods, you could probably explain why you had
Yeah.
these periods.
I can't.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's amazing all the data that you can get off of this. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So let's wrap up. Well, I'll ask you my one last question, but is there anything that maybe we didn't talk about that you want to touch on, or
Hmm.
are we good?
No, I think we've been through a lot. So yeah, I think we've been through most
All
things.
right.
Of course, I'm also on many other podcasts. So if they want me to explain other things, I've been on probably I think on 100 American podcasts. The last year.
Really? I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
know that. Oh, that's
yeah. A
cool.
lot. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool. That's cool. Well, I do ask everybody the same question. What is one small step that somebody can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
One small step, and yeah, the really small step would be to get a device, get a wearable. Yeah, that would be my version of it. Of course, I could say things like making sure you sleep better, but that for so many people it's actually getting a wearable to be
Yeah.
able to do what you have experienced, and so many people that have experienced that it's so helpful, kind of companion. It's like connecting a dashboard to your
Mhm.
own physiology, and
Yeah.
it teaches you so much. So it's really a short. It's I think the cheapest watches, I think, in Garmin in the US would probably be $250 or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. That's what
Or
mine was. That
and
was the
and
one that gave the most They gave
Yeah.
you the most feedback for the least amount of money. But yeah,
And
I
and 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 compared to what you will save in future expenses for health, it is a
it's a small
really small step.
it
It's
is.
a
It is.
baby step.
I normally don't tell my guests, like, I don't usually add to their small steps, but I would say, and if anybody is listening is even more curious, buy a copy of your book because the
Mm,
book was just so thorough and helpful. And the other thing that I really enjoyed about your book is that you have this theme of expedition within your
mm.
book. So it's not dry reading. It was very
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
So,
and it's also an Audible. It's also an Audible and an
okay.
ebook. If many people
Mhm.
would prefer listening rather than reading while they're driving to work or whatever. I
Yeah.
think it's like a 6-7 hour reading or Audible. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, as we wrap up, Dr. Torkil, how can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Dr. Torkil on Instagram, dr.torkil. And we also have a website called thepulsecure.com where you can see a video lecture where I explain these curves that we have been talking about. They would be able then to see it on YouTube and other channels, other
Okay,
podcasts also if they want to listen
perfect.
more.
Well,
So, mm,
thank you for the gift of your time. I've
mm,
thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
thank you. Very nice to hear your experiences also and be able to discuss it. That's the first one actually, so that's really cool.
Oh, good. Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I had fun. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.